Communication is one of those topics that is a recurring request, whether it be in leadership development, creating more dynamic teams that work better together, solving some organizational problems. But oftentimes what we'll see in communication training is that there is still an unbalanced approach. The focus is on how do we articulate ourselves clearly so other people understand us. Now, in the space of emotional intelligence, we don't approach communication from the speaking standpoint. In fact, if you and I look at our journey through our communication training, we're going to notice probably a common trend. Lots of time spent on learning how to speak and very little time learning on how to listen. So this creates an unbalanced teeter-totter in that we're really good, potentially, at articulating our thoughts, our feelings, our ideas, expressing our experiences, showing our intellect. We might not be so great at listening for meaning, watching the visual cues that give us more information than just the words that are being spoken, listening for clarity, listening for the experience of the other person, trying to see it from their perspective. So when we come at communication from an emotional standpoint, we start at foundational skills, because without these foundational skills, we can't do any of this other communication stuff. And the foundation skills are empathy and assertiveness. Where we're usually light is on the empathy side of the teeter-totter. It's not usually the assertiveness side that's the problem. It's the empathy side. So let's take a look, because you might even be saying, like, how could empathy be a problem? Dr. Kim Scott, Radical Candor, describes empathy can be ruinous if it's not balanced with challenging. So in emotional intelligence language, if it's not balanced with assertiveness. So if this is our empathy side of the teeter-totter and we weigh ourselves really heavily in empathy, then what can happen is people don't have that opportunity to speak their ideas, their perspective. We're just in this listening stage of including everyone's ideas and nobody really speaking up or challenging. So now we end up having like groupthink. That can be ruinous. But if I also don't feel that my individuality is important or valued or contributing to an outcome, I can actually start to create emotions of resentment, and I can disengage from the work because it's not exciting. So we need to have this balance with our assertive capacity. Now, if we unbalance it, if we weight assertiveness too heavily, then what ends up happening is only a few people's ideas get heard. So only a few people get the microphone. Only a few people consume the oxygen in the room. Oftentimes, those people are also attached to a title. So now it's only certain people in positions of power and authority, and everyone else doesn't feel seen or heard. And that's another means of disengaging from work. And what we see is in both situations, we deteriorate relationships. And this is why it becomes hard for us to work together. This is why when we come into conversations, it seems like we can't communicate well. It's because, well, we're not communicating well. We're unbalanced in the teeter-totter. The first thing we have to be able to examine and assess is which way do we float first? So where do we usually tend to get too heavy or bottom out? And I could probably help you here, as it's not usually the empathy side. We're not usually too heavily weighted on the empathy side. We're too heavily weighted on the assertive side. And so we have to start to tweak the dial. We have to balance our teeter-totter out. When we do this, what ends up happening is we have conversation in which everyone gets a chance to have the microphone. Everyone has the opportunity to be heard. More ideas come into the pool. And when more ideas and contributions come into the pool, man, does it ever make a big difference in our capacity to solve problems creatively, innovatively, to challenge and push the envelope. And for everyone to buy in, because if all ideas are in the pool, we're all participating, we're all engaged. This is a very different team dynamic than the one that remains unbalanced in the teeter-totter.